Today we gather as a community of believers to celebrate, as I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, to celebrate one of the most important things that we do as a parish community. It is one of the most enjoyable celebrations of the year, and that is the reception of First Holy Communion by the children, the students of this parish, both the school and our parish religious education program. Each of these children has already received Jesus for the first time in the sacrament of penance or reconciliation. And I hope that it's one of many times, not because I want them to go to confession, but we all know as adults we need to go to confession. But it's what we learn in the sacrament that that I'm sort of highlighting here, and that is that we learn that God is merciful in the sacrament of penance. As long as we are properly disposed, because we always have to be willing to admit our faults, our sins, and so on. But when we have done that, when we are willing to do this, God is always willing to forgive. God's mercy is infinite. And hopefully we also are learning, when we go to confession, how to forgive others. If we connect the dots, as I like to say. God has forgiven us so generously, we then need to learn how to forgive one another. And we all know, just by watching the news, let alone looking around our social circles, we need to learn forgiveness. It's so important, what it is and what it is not. So they have received our Lord for the first time in this beautiful sacrament Jesus gave to the church on the night of the resurrection, on Easter Sunday. Now you are going to receive Jesus in the most wonderful sacrament of the Holy Eucharist, or Holy Communion. As I launch into this wonderful celebration, I want to tell the true story of Christians who continue to teach us the importance of Sunday and the Holy Eucharist. It's tied up with the Lord's Day, with Sunday. It's so important because I have a real passion now for leadership. And one of the things that I run across all the time is I'm watching videos and listening to podcasts and reading books and even getting personal instruction, is the importance of mentors, the absolute importance and critical need for mentors. Not just teachers, but mentors. And mentors have a profound influence on those they're mentoring if they're decent mentors, if they're decent to good mentors. Well, I believe the martyrs are the true and the ultimate mentors that we have as Christians, as Catholics. Why? Because they gave the greatest witness. That's what being a martyr means, is to witness. So there are different levels of being a martyr, but the word martyr means to bear witness. So when we hear about these true people, they're not just made up, but they're actually brothers and sisters of ours. Even in this case, they go back to 303 AD. We can be mentored by them, convicted, and encouraged by their example. And I hope you are, as well as your children. It's so important that they hear these true stories. These Christians lived in a place called Abitene, a city of the Roman province that is called Tunis. They were victims of the Emperor Diocletian's persecution. Diocletian was one of the nastier emperors, and he initiated a persecution after a relative period of calm. The Emperor Diocletian ordered that the sacred texts and holy testaments of the Lord and the divine scriptures be found so they could be burned. The Lord's basilicas, so churches, were to be pulled down, and the celebration of the sacred rites and holy reunions of the Lord, meaning Sunday, or other opportunities for baptism and things like this, were to be prohibited by an imperial decree. So disobeying the emperor's orders, a group of 49 Christians of Abitene, among them a senator, somebody had a lot to lose, a senator, a priest, and many others gathered weekly in one of their homes to celebrate Sunday Mass. Taken by surprise during one of these meetings in Octavius Felix's home, they were arrested and taken to Carthage to the proconsul I'm still trying to pronounce his name, Anulinus, or Anulinus. to be interrogated. When the proconsul asked them if they kept the scriptures in their homes, the martyrs answered courageously that they kept them in their hearts. You think they were being cheeky. This is not a time to be cheeky. No, that they kept them in their hearts, revealing that they did not wish to separate faith from life. It's an important answer. They did not wish to separate faith from life, so they kept the scriptures in their hearts. In other words, they heard them and read them so often, they memorized them. And not just memorize them because we can memorize a lot of stuff and it has no effect in our life, but it actually had a transformative effect on their life. And they were willing to put their lives on the line. Just think about the scenario in which they are standing now before this proconsul. Their life is on the line. They're going to die. Among the testimonies is that of an individual called Emeritus, who affirmed fearlessly that he received Christians for the celebration. The proconsul asked him, "Why have you received Christians in your home, transgressing the imperial dispositions?" And this was his answer. I'll give it in Latin because it has a majestic ring to it, and then I'll translate it into English. Sine Dominico non possumus. So the Italians might get this. Sine Dominico non possumus. Now, this answer is going to determine his life. So this is not a whimsical response. Sine Dominico non possumus. We cannot exist without Sunday. We cannot exist without Sunday. Our life would be meaningless without this day. From Dominico, we have the word dominicum. It has a triple meaning in Latin when it's translated into English. It indicates the Lord's day, but also refers to what constitutes its contents. His resurrection, this is the day on which the Lord rose from the dead. Not Saturday, but Sunday, to inaugurate a new creation. To inaugurate a new creation. And 3, his presence in the Eucharistic event. So the Lord's day, his resurrection, and his presence in the Eucharist. Deep down was the conviction that Sunday Mass is constitutive, was a constitutive element of one's Christian identity, and that there is no Christian life without Sunday and without the Holy Eucharist. They were all martyred. They died for what they said and did and believed in. They were willing to actually go all the way. The martyrs, those who have given the ultimate witness to Jesus Christ and to our Catholic faith, remind us by their words, for sure, but more importantly, by their actions, the response we need to give to Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith. These martyrs, witnesses of Abitene, are part of the reason why I would contend, I firmly, absolutely am convinced of this, they are part of the reason why your children today are gathered here in this church, because they held fast, and others were mentored by them, by their example, profoundly moved by their example, and they held fast, and others held fast, and others held fast, and they passed the faith down to their children, and 2,000 years later, here we are in this church. We should not underestimate the importance of their witness. But each of you needs to ask, is it enough just to come on a Sunday? Is it enough to receive the Holy Eucharist one time, or to receive the sacrament of penance 1 or 2 times? Statistics say, and anecdotal evidence verifies or concurs, that many of these children do not attend Mass on a regular basis. Nor will they, if nothing changes, when they reach grade 7 and are seeking confirmation, when the statistics are even worse. Because Mom and Dad are not going. For all sorts of reasons, whatever it is. And this is not a moment to embarrass or even intentionally make anyone feel uncomfortable, although that's not always the worst thing in life. Sometimes we need to be made uncomfortable or be uncomfortable when things are said to us that perhaps we have forgotten that are truly important, so that we are reminded, things help us remember and challenge us. In this case, that unless something is done differently, then nothing will change, and they will likely become a statistic rather than a disciple of Jesus Christ. Because faith is not caught, it is taught. Faith is not taught, it is taught, or it's not caught. In other words, they'll grow up and they'll make their own decision. No, maybe I should have said maybe, but they need to be taught, and not just by mouth, but by the eyes. In other words, by seeing the example that we give them. That is the way it's internalized and becomes part of their system, their whole heart, mind, and soul. Each of you needs to ask, what do I really, really want for my child or for my children? Undoubtedly, you want the best in life. You want the best that life can offer in terms of education and physical well-being, which is good and very good. But do you also want the best that heaven and their Catholic faith can offer? Jesus is very clear with all of us. There is no fuzziness in his teaching that God is to be loved first and foremost. And Jesus gave us the sacraments so that we could become more and more like him. But this will never happen. This will not happen if we try to do this on our own terms or whenever we feel like it. Even a priest can go through his whole life and actually fail to become like Christ if he's not careful, because the great danger for the priest is that he becomes used to God. Because I'm saying Mass all the time, I'm preaching. We know the things that we do all the time, we can become almost forgetful of what we're doing, and the impact of their importance can sometimes just not really hit us because we become used to. I can become used to God. That's why I pray every day that God helps me never become used to him. Sounds like it's absurd, but it can happen so easily. But this will never happen, as I said, if we try to do things on our own terms or whenever we feel like it. Today is truly a wonderful day. Let us all pray that the example of these brothers and sisters of ours of Abitene over 1,700 years ago, who gave their lives to gather on Sunday to receive the Eucharist, to hear the scriptures being read, serve to motivate us to do the same, to make Sunday, which is the Lord's day, to make it the day of our lives, in your lives and in the lives of your children, where we could and would want to say, Sine Dominico non Possumus. I cannot live without Sunday. It is the focal point of my life. It is what gives energy, direction, clarity to the rest of my week, which would mean to others around us the same thing that it meant to the proconsul. It indicates the supremacy of the Lord's Day in our life and the lives of our children. It indicates that we gather to celebrate and thank him for the gift of his resurrection. And if we are properly prepared, that we receive his presence in the Eucharistic event.